All right, so Trump finally is getting into some of the nitty-gritty of his economic policy. Aside from everybody focusing on what he told Hannity in terms that he really seemed to favor kind of a progressive tax system, what is his economic policy?
Well, it's still taking shape. I've had a kind of sneak preview of these 14 points that he would make as the basis for his economic platform. And they do, some of the stuff is things that you and I would agree with. They're lowering tax rates, maybe eliminating or cutting the corporate tax rate, bringing income tax rates down to as low as 15%. What worries me is this emphasis on trade protectionism and tariffs, and I think that's just the wrong approach. Look, I believe, and this is one of the things I'm going to tell Donald Trump when we meet with him in September, is that if we have a good tax system, if we get rid of some of these crazy regulations, if we were to repeal things like Obamacare, the United States can outcompete any other country in the world, and that these export markets are important to us. So I think trade protectionism is a disaster. The last Republican president who was a protectionist was Herbert Hoover. That didn't turn out so well for the country or the Republican Party. So trade protectionism is a big mistake. We need to focus on competitiveness, and that means improving the policies in Washington.
He also said that he's for the wealth tax, but for tax cuts, which that seems to be just a little bit of an oxymoronic. Yeah,
but see, here's the thing. It depends on what day you ask, right? I mean, some days he says he's for lower taxes, some days he says he's for higher taxes. And look, sometimes I feel like he's making this stuff up as he goes along, because you're right. He has talked about a wealth tax, but then he also talked about eliminating the estate inheritance tax, which is a wealth tax. So I don't quite exactly know where he should be. But what I do know is that running as a Republican, as an anti-immigration, pro-trade barrier, pro-tariff candidate has never really been a very good economic program, and I'm not so sure it's very good politics either.
Yeah, and on the minimum wage, he does not believe that we should increase the minimum wage, no federally mandated or state mandated increase?
Well, I don't know. I haven't heard him make a statement about the minimum wage. I can tell you my opinion, which I think raising the minimum wage much higher than $8 or $9 an hour is a big mistake. I think it will displace a lot of the lowest skilled workers. But I haven't really heard what he's had to say about that. He put out manifestos over the week on trade and immigration. I thought they were both weak. I thought they were both kind of believing in this idea of a fortress America, where we're just going to keep out everything that's foreign out of this country, and rather than stand up and compete. And Dana, as an economist, I feel very strongly if we could just reverse a lot of the crazy things Obama has done in the last 6 years and some of the mistakes we made in the last few years of the Bush administration, we can get back to high growth, 4%, and we can solve these problems and compete on an international scale with any country in the world, whether it's China, Germany, Japan, France, Italy, or Mexico.
Right. I was happy to see him discuss, corporate tax rate, et cetera. But one of the things that I would have thought, Stephen, that Donald Trump would have mentioned at the very least is maybe discuss the repeal of Dodd-Frank, or at the very least doing something to dismantle it, because that's just, oh my heavens. The fact that Trump would be one of the best candidates to speak to that, and he hasn't yet.
Yeah, look, I think that what's attractive about Donald Trump, and I've said some critical things about him obviously tonight, but I think one of the attractive things about him is the fact that he is running as a non-politician. He's running against the corruption and incompetence of Washington. And let's face it, the last 6 and 7 years of political leadership in both parties has been pretty incompetent. And I've always believed this country needs a business leader who knows how to run something. And let's face it, the federal government is a $4 trillion enterprise. So I think there's a lot to be said for someone of Donald Trump's caliber and his qualifications. But I just disagree with him in some of his policy conclusions.